This podcast has been primarily abstracted from the executive summary of Joint Publication 1, entitled Doctrine for the Armed Forces of the United States. Joint Publication 1 is the capstone publication for all joint doctrine, presenting fundamental principles and overarching guidance for the employment of the armed forces of the United States. It provides doctrine for unified action by the armed forces of the United States. As such, it specifies the authorized command relationships and authority that military commanders can use, provides guidance for the exercise of that military authority, provides fundamental principles and guidance for command and control, prescribes guidance for organizing joint forces, and describes policy for selected joint activities. It also provides the doctrinal basis for interagency coordination and for U.S. military involvement in multi-agency and multinational operations. The guidance in Joint Publication 1 is broad, authoritative, and serves as a foundation for the development of more specific joint guidance. This doctrine will be followed except when, in the judgment of the commander, exceptional circumstances dictate otherwise. Joint doctrine promotes a common perspective from which to plan, train, and conduct military operations. It represents what is taught, believed, and advocated as what is right. In other words, what works best. Conducting joint operations generally involve 12 broad principles, collectively known as the principles of joint operations: objective, offensive, mass, economy of force, maneuver, unity of command, security, surprise, simplicity, restraint, perseverance, and legitimacy. These principles guide warfighting at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels of war. U.S. military service is based on values that U.S. military experience has proven to be vital for operational success. The values are integrity, competency, physical courage, moral courage, and teamwork. These values, while not specific to joint operations, have special impact on the conduct of joint operations. These values adhere to the most idealistic societal norms, are common to all the services, and represent the essence of military professionalism. Competent joint warfighters must be skilled in thinking strategically and at optimizing joint capabilities, applying strategic and operational art, and having a joint perspective. The security environment is extremely fluid, with continually challenging coalitions, alliances, partnerships, and new national and transnational threats are constantly appearing, disappearing, or in remission. The U.S. military is well positioned to conduct operations, but must also be prepared to address emerging peer competitors and irregular, catastrophic, and disruptive challenges. Additionally, irregular warfare has emerged as a major and pervasive form of warfare. Typically, in irregular warfare, a less powerful adversary seeks to disrupt or negate the military capabilities and advantages of a more powerful, conventionally armed military force, which often represents the nation's established regime. The ability of the United States to achieve its national strategic objectives is dependent on the effectiveness of the U.S. government in employing the instruments of national power. The instruments of national power come from the diplomatic, informational, military, and economic sectors, and are normally coordinated by the appropriate government officials, often with National Security Council direction. As the military instrument of national power, the armed forces must ensure their adherence to U.S. values, constitutional principles, and standards for the profession of arms. The United States wields the military instrument of national power at home and abroad in support of its national security goals in a variety of military operations. National strategic direction is governed by the Constitution, federal law, U.S. government policy regarding internationally recognized law, and the national interest. This direction leads to unified action. The result of effective unified action is unity of effort to achieve national goals. At the strategic level, unity of effort requires coordination among government departments and agencies within the executive branch, between the executive and legislative branches, with non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, the private sector, and among nations in any alliance or coalition. The President and Secretary of Defense, hereinafter referred to as SecDef, through the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, hereinafter referred to as the Chairman, provide direction for service secretaries and combatant commanders. Commanders at all levels ensure their forces operate in accordance with the law of war, often called the law of armed conflict. The law of war is international law that regulates the conduct of armed hostilities and is binding on the United States and its individual citizens. It includes treaties and international agreements to which the United States is a party, as well as applicable customary international law. The President and SecDef exercise authority and control of the armed forces through two distinct branches of the chain of command. One branch runs from the President through the SecDef to the combatant commanders for missions and forces assigned to their commands. The other branch, used for purposes other than operational direction of forces assigned to the combatant commands, runs from the President through the SecDef to the secretaries of the military departments. The President, through the SecDef, and with the advice and assistance of the Chairman, establishes combatant, unified commands for the performance of military missions and prescribes the force structure of such commands.